Choppy markets in the United States and planting kicking off in South America with changing weather patterns. We are going to discuss all of that and more right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we have had some news this week before we jump into soybeans and corn, which are the main topics of our channel. I think it's substantial news that China has resumed purchases of wheat from the United States this week.
Yes, that was well, they've they haven't been a real big buyer of wheat over the years, but they have been buying some of the specialty wheats. They bought a cargo of white wheat, soft rye wheat, which is a Michigan wheat, and also they bought some spring wheat. Those are things that they use in certain things over there. And to some extent, there might be some additional supplies of that going forward. I think that's the old test market scenario on that. They also they've been a buyer of sorghum over the years and actually been a primary buyer of our U.S. sorghum on an export basis. And so they made some purchases there. Uh, in the midst of this, we've had optimism about expanded U.S. Corn and soybean exports in the world, primarily, of course, to China. But one of the factors in here is that the South Americans, and particularly Brazil, have been concerns about losing any of their market they might have. So they've actually ended up decreasing their prices here this week and took some additional supply exports that primarily were after in the new crop out there, but there was some old crop numbers of cargoes of beans for sure that came in here. So that rattled the market. Then we ended up having uh, other events start to impact the thing. We've had a choppy market, as you mentioned earlier, and I think that that's probably going to continue up until the updated USDA crop reports will be put out a week from, well, it'll be next on the 14th of November. It's less than 7 days away. But in general here, the market's still very nervous about was China going to be a big buyer or not going to be a big
Yeah,
buyer.
yeah. Since we mentioned trade after right after the meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping, we have had some real deals of purchases by China of U.S. soybeans.
Yeah, they were some early and a little after, but the biggest thing is that the Chinese, or at least the market, keeps pointing at some of the issues that the U.S. has had some longer term, uh, excuse me, the tariffs out there in the 10 to 50, 13% level, and that's supposedly the reason why they're not buying right away here after they made the announcement they were going to be purchases. Interesting right now is that the biggest question is the 12 million metric tons that was supposedly agreed upon. I think the Chinese are, since that's a number that's available between now and their harvest, while the U.S. thinks it should be bought by the 1st of January. And we get those kind of interpretations going on, even into the longer term deals of 25 million metric tons. So that, unfortunately, that kind of stuff continues. It will always, the Chinese scenario is always cautious about what they really agree to in their minds, what the West thinks that
Yeah,
they
but you
agree.
think that those commitments until January they will come to reality, or you just think that the Chinese wanted to show a strong sign to President Trump?
Boy, that is a great question. At this point, I think it's probably more than $1 million, probably $1 billion question. I kind of feel like that they are going to be a buyer. I'm not sure that there's going to be 12 million metric tons. But the interesting thing about it in soybeans, we really don't need them to be that strong of a buyer out here. With the reduced supplies we have this year and things like that, if you know, right now, the rest of the world could be picking up some additional supplies, plus that even half or two-thirds of that amount is on the books. That's going to be a positive here on and that and moving uh, or keeping our carryover stock uh, reasonably tight at this point, uh, with the exports being in the 1.68 billion bushel number of it, which I think is where the USDA is going to be coming up on the USDA supply and demand.
Yes, and so with that, we have the choppy market. Also, with South America having some uh, changing weather patterns with a cyclone in southern Brazil and substantial and torrential rains in the center west as a result of the cyclone and the soybean planting kicking off in Argentina.
Yeah, well, a cyclone occurring in, or in essence, a tornado, as we call it here in the northern hemisphere, is definitely a big factor in weather. Interestingly enough, soybeans early in their lives here, when they come out of the ground from their seed, they are not the sturdiest plant in the world, and so the heavy rains and wind and things like that could easily damage certain areas here of plantings. Not all, but if the plant can get up probably 3, 4 inches, then it's going to probably hang in there. Or it could get bent over, but come back. But if you're talking about recently planted stuff and that, it could easily require a replant, and that's another feature that's always been a factor in South America and what its production will be or won't be. In general, there's also a big concern about the La Nina situation. Will it be a heavy duty one where it really clamps down on precip here later in the growing season, or will it be a mild one? I've heard projections on both sides of that, so that's another one that's going to be a factor in South America. They had a very good growing season last year, so it's probably not going to be the carbon copy of that going forward in the 2025, or, well, 2026 really, growing season here for South America. Uh, yes, Argentina had some nice rains ahead of their planning, and they've been kind of moving along. So, but there's kind of committed to expanded corn production this year, it seems like, and versus soybeans. So we'll see how those numbers actually turn out to be.
Yes, and yet we will have a full market week next week. What do you think the market is watching at this time?
Oh well, it's going to be looking at the trade expectations that will be out on Monday afternoon and Tuesday here for the upcoming USDA report. Despite the shutdown, the USDA has been accumulating the data here from uh, their various enumerators out there. Plus, supposedly they went ahead and did a survey of producers as they've done in the past. I think that was the one that's really is going to be quite interesting how that dramatically might have changed here from September until now, particularly from Illinois westward. Well, take that back. Even Indiana has had some real issues about rust and disease issues and that. So those that'll be a part of it. They'll have their enumerators numbers in here and that. So hopefully we get a good update. I think they realized they just could not wait from September all the way to a final number here, and so they are. A few days late. I guess they were going to schedule to do it on Monday the 10th, but now they're doing it on November 14th, next Friday, from there. And that's going to be a choppy scenario, I think, going into it. There's uh, the soybean side of things. hasn't had as many disappointing kind of results, but I don't know that it's had as many super strong yield numbers either, and that's also a part of it. So those will be the factors that soybeans is. Right now, corn is going to be the one that everybody's watching here on what kind of yield the USDA is going to come up with.
What are the price levels that you were expecting for next week?
Well, I kind of feel like we're going to continue in the current ranges we're in. We might, after the report, maybe take a push here and take the soybeans up to in the January, I should say, up into that 1150, 1160 area. Corn's going to be real interesting. I kind of feel like that the recent highs here in the 435, 440 zone. Still going to be a tough one here, and that because I'm anticipating that the USDA is going to take their number on the U.S. production number uh, down below 184, actually down to 183 and a half. And that from there, which is down 3 bushels or so from the USDA September number. The interesting twist on it is back at the final product or final stocks number, we found some additional supplies here in the U.S. Uh, U.S. Ending stocks here as competition from sorghum and other grains really kind of because things are tight and people are looking at other things that are cheaper than corn. And so that we have a little extra corn supplies here of about 200 million at 1.53 billion number. And so I think that's going to compensate for it, but we're still going to see what that corn number it's going to still stay in this 2 billion. I'm actually looking at 2 billion and 25 million bushels. And that, sure, if we didn't have that additional supplies of last year, we'd probably be a number down by like 1.85 or something, but that isn't going to be the case, I don't think. From there, because, and interestingly enough, the final production number could still be lower than this. Last year we had a 3.5 bushel decline. I don't think that's what we're going to have this year, but we're going to have something lower potentially. Is what usually small crops get smaller, bigger crops get bigger. So if we get a smaller crop, I'm anticipating a smaller corn production number for the coming year here. Uh, than what we're at right now. So with that being said, the interesting twist here is that corn exports are going to be really the one to watch going into this coming year. I think that the feed usage is maybe down a little bit from what the OCA is, but I think that ethanol will be strong and maybe even see that. I'm saying 50 this month expansion from the USDA's current projection. I think it could even be more than that, maybe as much as 100 higher later in the year. But right now, at least, the I think that's some of the interesting data that could come out of the corn numbers at this point. From there. Soybeans, interesting world there. We did see the final production number on beans slide about, oh boy, that was off about 15 million or so on the final production, final stocks numbers, I should say, in September. And then, as I said, the I sense that we're going to have a number of just a smidgen under 53 at 52.7. U.S. yield down from the 53 and a half we had back in September. From there, and I think the one thing I was concerned about last month was we were going to see a reduction in the export sales. And I don't sense that that's going to be the case. I think they'll leave them unchanged at 1.685 billion. So that actually takes our carryover stock down to around, excuse me, 225 million bushels. It's not extremely tight, but definitely going the right way. So interestingly enough, at the bean number here, because of the issues uh, uh, in the world markets here with actually things starting to sprint up here a little bit with the Chinese interest potentially coming in. Kind of feel like that's the number that will be the one that's more positive. Now, do I think it's going to go, it's $12 on this unless something happens dramatically here and we take the carryover or take the US yield down below 52? I don't think that's, we're still going to be struggling out here because the world's going to continue to watch South American prospects and what happens. If La Nina does really intensify, that could be a factor longer term. But right now, like you pointed out, we had a lot of rain in some spots this last week, and so that's going to carry us a little bit further going into the market here.
Yeah,
Long.
one thing that I would like to also bring for our viewers is the news that China has resumed poultry imports from Brazil after the the disease that has outbreak there and earlier this year. So that might also help the markets with China resuming poultry imports from Brazil.
Uh, Thanks for bringing that up. I had not picked that up. We've had so many different things happen about what's between the U.S., China, and Brazil, and what's happened and what isn't happening. That's that is a generally positive scenario there. That part of the reason that we've had also maybe a little bit reduced idea of cattle. Uh, uh, Prices actually it's been over a $20 break here since that happened 3 weeks ago. There's the fact that South America, Argentina's going to supply some beef, and now uh, Brazil's going to be back in providing poultry to China and that. So interesting issues out there in the livestock world, which means potentially less feeding on the U.S. if those things continue to expand here longer term. So in general, here the markets are going to be choppy going into those numbers on Friday, and we'll be responding to them at this point. I kind of feel like the best chance for some surprise could actually end up being in the soybeans if we have some kind of yield. Now, the yield scenario on beans doesn't take a huge amount of adjustment from the 53.5. If we had a bushel and a half lower, which is not impossible. I think the problem with soybeans is that the big yields haven't been as big this year as they traditionally have been. And last year we had a big decline when the market lost a lot of information here. And the same thing happened again this time. We've had limited news out of the field here in the last month or so. And so that'll be interesting as we go forward. It'll be uh, right now, the one tricky thing is that seasonally we tend to have a lot of our highs on egg prices around Thanksgiving, and that's coming up at the end of the month. And so keep that in mind. Short term wise, we have some chances for higher prices, but at the same time, during the month of December, the markets kind of decide to get a holiday mood and don't have as much excitement during December.
All right, thank you very much.
You bet. Have a good week. We'll talk next week after the report.